Okay. This is live. If you're subscribed, I think you get a notification. If you are not, I'm going to try and figure out how to add that link to the video stream that we just got off of. So, hi everyone who's here right now. I can't see. Let's see. Live chat. There you go. Okay. Hi, Philip. I'm like, where did the chat go? Let's move a link over. Here we go. So that I'm gonna figure this out eventually. But okay, here we go. That's the live chat link. Let's move over. Okay, and I'm gonna put it in the comments. No. I'm sure there's a better way to do this than in the straight the throes of it all, but we're going to do what we can with what we have. All right, and I can see your chats here. That's great. Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome back to another Sunday chat. I will be chatting, taking questions. I got some questions on the wall behind me as before, just in case nobody shows up. Plant lady, yeah. Hi, Joe. Oh, these move so fast. Okay, so the way this is gonna work is I got some questions here. There's gonna be some questions coming from chat as well. If you have a question you really want answered, if you look at your chat window, there's a little button that's next to the emoji smiley guy that looks like a $sign. And so that will bump your chat up if you decide to do a super chat. That'll also help buy some cover crop seeds for the field, which I'm starting to plan that and realizing how much I need to get. But we're going to get it all figured out. A couple of things that I just wanted to go over if you were just watching that video with us, and things that I had just thought about. One is, if you decide to do the bottle watering method, one of the things that I've noticed in doing it is if the soil is really dry, like this isn't something that you set up after you haven't watered for a long time and then you go on vacation and hope that it's going to keep stuff watered. That's not going to work out for you. If your soil is really dry, it needs to be watered. I've replaced bottles on a couple of these a few times now, so it'll take like maybe 2-3 days to really get it to a point where the water stays in the bottle and slowly feeds the soil as it dries, versus thinking that it's going to last several days right from the get-go. If your soil is dry, it's not going to work out. So, you know, just monitor it, and then hopefully you can get it to a point where a couple of days, it will last a couple of days, you know, moving forward. So that's something I've discovered. I also heard from a friend who is trying it. They have sandy soil. It doesn't work super well, so you might want to look into the attachments, or like some people in chat suggested, just punching a few holes in whatever the lid was on that bottle, putting it back on. Happy birthday, Liza Glider. I didn't know it was your birthday. You didn't even tell me. But happy birthday. You share a birthday with my little sister. It's also her birthday today. So I guess Leos unite. That's awesome. Let's see. What's in the big jar on my shelf? What big jar? Oh, this. So this is the pepper cuttings that are in aloe that I got a few people who are like, you shouldn't be sharing methods if they're not proven, but I was excited about it. And I figured I like to do experiments and I like to share them with you guys, so that lots of people try them, and then we can kind of get a consensus on does this work or doesn't it, because I feel like there's a lot of tips on the internet and they're like, do this and it's great. Go through those tips one at a time collectively and be like, does this work or not, so we can decide, you know, which ones we should share moving forward. That's where I'm at. I feel like I need to sing happy birthday, but I don't know. So yeah, this big jar, you can see they're still green and kicking. The aloe is getting a little brown and gross, and I have some water in the bottom of here to try and keep the humidity up around them, but I haven't seen too many leaves fall off, so I did a couple more because I have more peppers out there that I pruned. So yeah, that's what's in that big jar. Oh no, I knocked over my little moth. Oh, he lost a wing. I have bugs that I find they get trapped in the greenhouse sometimes. I'll show you. I got like butterflies and stuff, and so I like to save them for my weird shelves of various nature things. Let's get to questions. Let's see. Losing pepper plants, they keep falling over. Okay, so if your pepper plants are falling over, there's a solid chance that the roots are not able to get down in the soil. I don't know what your prep process was to get that going, but I have that issue in areas where there's like hard pan clay that are it's just a few inches down, and if you don't, if you haven't been working on it that long, or if it's not well loosened, they'll just kind of spread feeder roots out. This was another thing I was thinking about with the watering situation as well, is like you get these feeder roots that get spread out on the top layer because you're watering from the top, and you don't get any really diving down. And so I've had plants like peppers and stuff fall over because they're just not able to really get the roots down in the soil, and so they're accommodating their soil type and trying to exist in their home. So that might be part of it. If anyone else has like feedback on why they'd be falling over, feel free to drop it in there in the comments. Let's see. Yes, I will take all of the comments about how to run a live stream smoothly. This is my second one. I'm just trying to figure out like how this works out. Hi everyone who said hi. Just kind of scrolling through what's here. So, oh, I love it. I love Phyto Alchemist. You always have the like research to back stuff up, and I just love that. Send me the link please on Instagram and I'll check it out after we're done with this. I'm gonna hit a couple of things, like questions on here. There's questions about peppers always. Jalapenos are doing great but don't know when to harvest them. I say harvest them when you like the flavor, and I'm this way about basically all produce. Like the whole point of growing at home is not only to know how your food is being grown and eat the freshest version of it possible, but also to, I'm like looking at my peppers going, I wonder if I should pick some right now because I can see them out the window. But it's also to be able to eat stuff where you like it, how you like it. And so if you like a jalapeno that's green and still has really grassy notes and is like bright and maybe not, you know, super hot, although they can be hot when they're green, then like pick it then. And if you want it where it's a little more fruity, then pick it when it's red. I mean, you can do the same with melons. I don't really recommend it with the winter squash because the storage kind of gets screwed up, but you can do it with melons, you can do it with tomatoes, you can do it with a lot of stuff. It's just like harvest it at the point you like it, and if you don't know the point you like it at, then harvest it early and taste it, and if you don't like that flavor, then harvest it a little later the next time. And so I do this with melons actually, because I don't like that acetone flavor when you have like really overripe cantaloupes, and so I'll get it, like I'll try to get it right before that conversion starts to happen, and it kind of tastes like nail polish remover smells. So sometimes it's variety too, but I'd say figure out what your preferences are. This is the whole point of growing. There's no, you know, one right answer. So there's that. Let's see. I'm gonna grab something off the wall. This is one I get asked a lot, and so I figured we'd cover it live. What my educational background is, and so like we'll just be straight up. So I'm assuming this is about growing, but my educational background is actually theater and film, which were degrees that I've not, you know, gotten very much use out of. I worked in TV for a number of years, and then I went and worked in the corporate space for entertainment at Disney for a number of years after that. And then I decided, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm getting away from it. I want to farm. I just want to grow plants and work with those. But I don't know. I think that everything we learn in life kind of circles back around. And so now it's trying to put some of the lessons that I did learn in university to use. Everything I know as far as gardening and growing and, you know, regenerative agriculture and permaculture and whatever you want to call it is self-study. It's seeking out people who know it more than I do and asking them if they can help me connect the dots. It's reading everything I can get my hands on. It's, I mean, I wake up just about every day and read some, you know, peer-reviewed research that I've bookmarked that will take me 10 times as long as someone who studied science to actually fumble through because I don't know all of the words. But the whole point is that I want to learn it. So I think anything that you want to learn, if you want to learn it bad enough, and I found this to be true. A friend gave me that information and that advice. They're like, if you want to know, you don't have to go back to school. You have the internet at your disposal, so go and find good sources to learn from, get the, you know, good books, reach out to people, and see if you can't piece stuff together. So that's my educational background in a nutshell. I don't know how your mushrooms have been doing, and if I've started any yet. So I have not started any mushrooms for this season. I have a couple of blocks that are like spent blocks that I got from growers locally, as well as some shiitake spawn that I'd moved over. Kind of lazily tried to inoculate, but it's the hot and dry season right now, guys. Like, we're not gonna have mushrooms until it cools off and starts raining again. We don't see much fungal activity in the woods here, with the exception of the chanterelles early in the summer. But beyond that, like, I don't see the point of trying to inoculate wood when it's hot. I mean, maybe somebody is like, you know, out there that knows better than I do as far as when is a better time to inoculate, but I'm assuming fall would be the best. So I'm not moving into mushroom growing again until it cools off a little, because it just seems like it would be a lot of work for a lot of trouble. So yeah. Yeah, the aloe method, we can totally collectively disprove or prove it together. That's what I love about doing YouTube, is that I can post something out there and be like, I'm playing with this, and then some people will go, yeah, that totally works, and then some people will be like, yeah, that's dumb, and I don't know why you're doing it. But I want to know the people who've tried it, or who are willing to try it and do the experiments with me. Yeah, learning by screwing things up, Chris, that's like definitely the best way to put it. Do I sing to my plants? Obviously. Like, who would not sing to their plants? The plants love it. I have tried to reel back on the petting and touching them, because I did read something that was like, some plants don't like to be touched. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I'm not really asking them for permission. So, my peppers, let's see. So the question is, in the DFW area, how do you deal with them not fruiting? My peppers are actually fruiting right now for the most part, because most of them are, feels dry and there's like no moisture. But if there's any question about moisture left on it, like, just give it some more time and give it some more air, because moldy seeds are not your friend. So, yeah, so that was kind of MPPP. He said adding water, I'm not sure. Adding water to roots with those thin, long little pipes at the nursery seems to work really well. And that was sort of where the inspiration, I guess, for that bottle watering method came from. I was just looking around and going, okay, what materials do I have? What can I use that doesn't require me to buy anything? What could be used if the well isn't pumping? And so it's trying to figure out, like, ultimately, are there ways to make it so that if you were doing this off the grid, like, that would be possible? So that's kind of where my head is at when I'm, playing in these methods, as well as just managing garbage effectively. But I think any barrier to entry that you can avoid for new gardeners, you can help them avoid, whether it's irrigation or soil building, whatever. Like, if you can make that easier, then more people are growing food. And if more people are growing food, then we got a better shot at this whole thing. So that's the goal there. Oh no. People are saying that the live stream is not... Are you guys back up? Okay. Yeah, so we have, the internet should be cranking here, but yeah, I have 2 devices going, so hopefully that's not going to take anything down. So this is another question that I got. It said, oh, I froze when I was talking about peppers. Tell me if it catches back up, Christine, as far as keeping them in the shade. Because that would be, I'll like re-update that. Do I plan on visiting the UK? I've been to the UK a few times, and I would say never. I'm trying to limit travel. I had mentioned this last week, but I'm really trying to limit air travel, just because it is a large percentage of my carbon footprint. So, yeah, like, maybe at some point I'll do, like, a trip and be over in Europe bouncing around for like a month or 2 just to manage that. But never say never. It might happen. We'll see. How do I avoid burnout in my garden? Motivation, tiger strings. Oh, I feel you. I don't know what season you're in right now. And thank you. See, that's what a super chat looks like, by the way, you guys, if you're looking at it. I've been told I'm supposed to call these things out. But thank you. How do I avoid burnout in my garden? So it depends where you're at as far as how many seasons you've done in a space. And it really depends on what inspires that burnout too. I found for me, a lot of times it's having everything sort of in place and there's not anything going wrong and I need things to be going wrong in order to like be motivated and inspired to some extent, which is why I do lots of experiments that semi-fail and I can learn from them. If the burnout is just keeping up with things, then a lot of times it's, you know, addressing, you're in Kansas, okay, so it's addressing, you know, your method. You know, where is the burnout coming from? Is it coming from having to water every day? Because then it could be figuring out irrigation and mulching and amending soil so that it has better water retention. If it's coming from, you know, disease issues or insect pressure, it could be figuring out, you know, doing a smaller amount so that you can stay on top of it a little better. Or maybe adding in more plants that you don't, like, quote unquote care about as much, like you know, borders and flowers and whatnot, that you can just let those go and not worry about them. I started not suffering from, I kind of know, I think, what you were talking about. I started suffering a little bit less from burnout in the garden when I stopped trying to control it and organize it so extremely. And I know that it's not as productive as it could be because I kind of let everything go. But at the same time, it makes me really happy to go out there, not have to do too much to it, and just watch, you know, this ecosystem kind of living and existing in there. And I was out in the field, you know, cutting flowers earlier today, and I was, you know, saying hi to praying mantises and green lynx spiders and what looked like either lacewing or a ladybug or some beneficial, not larva, but like the younger instar of those beneficial insects, and they're like all over the place. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't look perfectly manicured, but it makes me happy and I don't burn out from it. So maybe try and like dial in where that burnout is, and then approach, you know, figuring out how to avoid that. Let's see, can you, oh my gosh, this scrolls so fast. So preventing a cat from using raised beds as a bathroom. It's very tough to do. My new cat, when I lived in LA, did the same. There's various things that you could try to spray, but honestly, I tried lots of things. I didn't have much luck with them. The best thing that I can recommend is to have both a combination of really heavy bark mulch, so the stuff that's like not as decomposed, which I don't love using. But the other thing is just to get your plants to be spaced a lot more closely so there's not as much bare soil for the cat to dig in. I found that that's probably the most effective, is just like making sure everything is planted and they don't have patches of soil. And then if you do have open patches while things are filling in, one of the things you can look at doing is using something like Agribon or a row cover just to cover it while it's filling in so that the cat's not disturbing everything. And then once they get their roots down and everything, then you should have a little bit less digging. But maybe also give them a little sandbox somewhere, like that it has, yeah, plant repellent, cat repellent plants are a good idea as well. So like herbs and stuff that they don't really like. But I'd honestly just give them a little sandbox off to the side and see if that doesn't help. Maybe, you know, throw some catnip around it or plant around it and see if it doesn't go in that direction. As always, if you guys are able to help each other with comments or questions in the chat section, please do, because that helps me out so much, and then I can learn from you guys reading through it later. Cilantro, you're not going to stop it from bolting. It is a harvest and replant. There was someone, I think, was it Experimental Farm Network? I don't know. I'll post it to Instagram when I find it later, but there was someone who had like this great seed starting for cilantro in the summer where they like put it in the freezer, or they started with ice cubes or whatever, and just to try and keep it cool enough to really get it going. And I thought it was a good tutorial, so I'll find the link to that and post it on Insta stories later. But yeah, you're not going to keep it from bolting when it's hot. It's just not possible. Yeah, exactly. So you squeeze other plants into the extra spaces on the soil and the cat will not be able to dig. That's like a great thing. Sorry, Mike. Yeah. No, the plan was to do it, always do it at noon. I feel like that's the best time for people who are here. If there's a better time collectively, like I can put up a survey or something, but we'll figure it out. I thought this just worked well. I've seen poblanas, yes, they do well in Zone 8B. I have a couple of friends growing them in Austin, and they're just like going nuts, so definitely recommend doing that. I have not heard anything about the Mountain Rose Herbs grant. I don't think they make a decision until August or September. I'm not sure. It's somewhere in there. But I'm moving ahead on my plans that I'm trying to do out there. It's just a little more tricky financially. But we'll get it done. Like, I have the vision and the persistence of it, so it's going to happen regardless. It's just trying to get it done. Too late to sprout fruit trees now in Central Texas. Yes, I would say, well, yeah, most of the fruit trees that I've grown from seed generally need that cold stratification period, and I'm doing a lot of like peaches and nuts, so your mileage may vary if it's a different variety, but I like to stick them in at some point in the winter time so they can get the like chill on the, I guess it cracks the nut shell or something, I'm not entirely sure. But I've found that I get much better germination rates. I don't think I would try to start anything right now while it's hot, so probably just like step back and enjoy what you have. If you have transplants, you can try and do some of those. But for the most part, I would not start too many seeds unless you have a protected area and you're starting for like fall and winter. We're going to go to some of these other questions. So one of them was, did you use Whoof? And if you don't know what Whoof is a worldwide, I don't remember what the acronym is, but it's basically you can volunteer to go and work on farms in exchange for room and board. So it said, did you use Whoof to live on the farm you're at today? And no, I did not. So the farm I'm at today is one that I'm starting with my father. He has always had the dream of having a farm and having a garden space to harvest fruits and vegetables from, to do things like pies and jams and salsas, and he makes really killer salsa. So it made sense to me to, instead of going to someone else's farm, to come here and help him, start this farm because we share the same dream. So I thought that would be the most logical approach. And then it gives me the creative ability to, test out various things without there being somebody breathing down my neck going, we were going to do it this way instead. I really want to see just like how I can regenerate the soil on the timeline, on a short timeline, but on the timeline that it needs, versus pumping it into production right from the get-go. So, let's see, whatever happened with your Korean natural farming experiments? So that has been put on hold for a minute. I'm still making stuff in the background, and I'm doing a lot of like the fermented plant juice and fermented fruit juice, and I've been playing with, spraying and soil drenching. As far as the IMOs, the indigenous microorganisms go, one of the things that, and like I'm a big trust your gut when you're farming and gardening, and one of the things that I thought about for the next step in the process is, are out there with a shovel or a pitchfork, turn every 10 minutes to try and keep it at a good temperature. So I decided that at the risk of not having that sooner, that I'd rather wait for it to cool off to a temperature, like an air temperature that the microbes would be happy at, and not totally cook and just like run through all of this time and materials, and it would be a waste. And that's not what I want. So yeah, I put it on hold for a minute, and I'm hoping to get to that in like the next month or so, get back into it when we get break temperature wise this week, but not enough to just, I can't sit outside all day right now when it's like 100-degree heat index, turning a pile hoping that it's going. It's so hard with the chat is like, woo. Yeah, I can't share my dad's salsa recipe. I'm really sorry, never. It's not mine to share, but I'm hoping that at some point we can get production up and going well enough that we can at least, share more jars out there. So stay tuned for that. So every seedling in your cold frame got scorched. Yeah, when the weather starts to heat up, and this is why you guys haven't seen many greenhouse notes from me in the greenhouse, is when the weather starts to heat up, our greenhouses heat up tremendously, and it's very difficult to keep things watered and keep things from melting down. Like the thermometer in my greenhouse right now says that it's over 100 degrees. So it's usually like 120, and it just, like, that doesn't work out. So I'd say if you're trying to revive them, if you're able to, oh no, I'm worried this froze again. Let's see, yeah, if you're trying to revive your seedlings that got scorched, if you can find a spot to move them to, that's not in that location, and just, you know, give them some water and keep an eye on them. You may have to prune off anything that got really scorched. Did you guys get any of that? I don't know why it froze again. Okay. Weird. So yeah, I'd say move the plants out of the cold frame. That would be my first step. If they're getting baked in the cold frame, it's because the temperatures are too hot. So if you have a spot that you can move them out to, whether, you know, it's in the garden or, you know, on a porch, or just someplace you can give them water and let them have a little bit cooler of a temperature. I don't have any plants in the greenhouse right now. There was a question somewhere up here too that was submitted as a snarky question on how, if I figured out how to vent my greenhouse yet, and I haven't. It's just not, like, I'm still figuring that out. So, yeah, the heat is definitely going to impact a lot of our plants. I'm seeing, you know, spinach is bolting, and so there's a couple of things. One of the things that I try to do early in the season is to, when I'm feeding, to do a little bit of humic acid that is supposed to help prevent or help plants adapt to stress a little bit better. And it's basically like you'd find humic acid in compost. If you have a compost pile going, then, you know, using compost when you're setting up your space is going to give you a similar effect. But working with native soil, this that much, and it is an acid, as the name states, so it could potentially, if you use tons of it, adjust your pH some. So follow the directions on the bag or bottle if you decide to go that route, or you know, top dressing with compost will help. But we are going to see plants bolting here. It's a great time to decide if you want to start saving seeds, if it's a variety that you liked. When it comes to greens, like letting it bolt and go to flower, letting the insects have that nectar and pollen, and then saving the seeds from there, like that is something that I highly recommend. I've found increased resilience in the germplasm that I keep when I save it. And we'll go over at some point, like not as live stream because there's so many different questions, but at some point in the near future we'll go over, you know, how to select from the seeds that your plants produce, just to try and decide like which ones are worth saving and which ones maybe are worth saving, but like more in a broadcast mix, or maybe just throwing in the compost, or, you know, like, so there's a variety of options there. But I highly recommend embracing the bolt as part of the natural process, planting more of something if, you know, you want more of it, and like just starting to get into understanding and better interacting with the rhythms of your season, because at least from a mental perspective, like that really helps. I don't know if it solves all the problems from like a tangible perspective, but yeah, so I feel like I missed some great stuff. Willow tea and compost tea, how to. I can definitely look into that. I think that I've done some willow teas and I do them way too strong, and they work, but I don't have like a set method. So a lot of it, like I say, a lot of it is playing. The compost tea is definitely something I'm working on, and I'm trying to figure out the most like low budget, low barrier to entry way to go about addressing it before I make a video on it, because there's so many things that can go wrong. But when all of the things go right, and if we can find a way to do, you know, tea brewers that are not so much money but are actually effective, like more effective than an aquarium air stone, then I'm all for it. Yeah, if you received a lot more rain than usual, affect the growth. I don't know what it's affecting the growth on, but any change in irrigation, any change in temperature, like all of these things are going to impact just how your plants respond and how they grow. There was, oh, I think that's a good segue. I can't find it. There was a question asking about blossom end rot, and that's another one. I know that when you look on the internet and like all the gardening forums, and people are talking about, oh, use Epsom salts, oh, use eggshells, or it needs more calcium or whatever, and it's like there could be a nutrient deficiency, but I can almost guarantee 99% of the time that you're seeing issues with, I mean, blossom end rot is definitely one on tomatoes, and I've heard some people get on peppers, and bitterness on cucumbers is another, and both of these are watering issues as far as I'm concerned. Like when I see blossom end rot show up, some of it is On the Roma tomatoes, especially San Marzanos, like those ones just seem more susceptible. But when I see it show up, it's because I haven't been consistently watering those plants. And so if they're going through these like periods of stress, then I mean, it could be a nutrient thing, but it could also be those nutrients are not as available because the water is not as available, so the plant stresses and like, you know, has to do what it can to survive. I don't know if that's completely it, but I can usually solve it on my problem plants by just making sure my watering is consistent. I don't have to add too much to it beyond that. Coffee grounds going white. So if your coffee grounds are going white in your compost pile, because that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that when we talk about food and we talk about, you know, like we don't want mold on food, we don't want all of these things, but once it gets back out into the open, and when we're, you know, working into compost piles or worm bins, there's a lot of beneficial fungi and bacteria and things that show up and they look fuzzy and white. And the way that I've learned to understand it is that fuzzy and white's not always a bad thing in the garden. If you're seeing like really bright colors or lots of black and gray, then that could potentially be more on the pathogen side. But a lot of times, like, there's just decomposers that are fuzzy and white, and so I don't see why those would hurt your worms. I probably would not like do tons and tons of it, like maybe just test them. So, but yeah, like I think most natural soil growers are looking for fuzzy and white stuff at all times. So I just don't see it being super dangerous. That's great to hear that you were able to solve your blossom drop with Epsom salts. I'm definitely I'm on the fence camp when it comes to Epsom salts, because I feel like they're looked at as a panacea in the garden, and I don't see how they could be. But I have started using what's it called? It's like some sort of salt that has all the minerals, and so according to the Korean natural farming, using seawater to like do the soluble minerals, I've been playing with that a little, and I feel like I have seen some improvement based on that. So yeah, if you find something that works for you, like that's great. I'm always hesitant to, you know, broadcast something as like the answer without completely understanding it, or at least understanding it well enough to stand behind it. So I've never actually had issues with, can you add coffee grounds to your soil without changing the pH is the question. I've never had issues with coffee grounds changing the pH. Supposedly, once they've been brewed, they're not going to. But there's a lot of conflicting information on that out there, so I don't know. I have a pH of 8 in case I didn't disclose that before. I think I have, but so the pH in our soil here is 8, so I'm not worried about adding acidic things to it for the most part. But I don't add that many either, so I work coffee grounds in around my berries. Like I just take them out to the forest and put them around the blueberries. Yeah, and blending stuff together works really well as well. Let's see. Are you getting any hop flowers on your hops? Oh my god, my hops are part of the reason that I started doing the bottle watering. I just saw them shrinking, and I'm like, these are supposed to be drought tolerant, but I just don't think they're well enough established. So I have one that looks like it's going to survive the rest of the season out of 4. There's one that's really struggling. There's one by the pond. It does not look like it's going to make it. And then there was the one that did right from the get-go. So, you know, we'll keep giving hops a shot. I'm pretty determined to grow them. No flower cones this year. I'm just happy to still see some green on some of them. I think they probably needed to be started in a little more shade than I gave them. And I had really high expectations of a lot of plants in the woods, and without, you know, thinking through that I might not be giving them everything that they needed. Yeah, the anaerobic tea is another thing I'm looking into with the Jadam techniques, or Jadam. I'm trying to figure out, just in between all of the natural soil building stuff, like what methods can be picked and choose from after, like you have to go through them all and learn them all, but then it's like, okay, well, which of these are the most effective and least amount of investment as far as time and energy and learning for other people to replicate? Because my goal, to be honest, like if we're going to talk about this, my goal is to figure out how to best help you guys. And Phyto Alchemist could tell you about this all day on his Instagram, but like figure out the best way to help you guys build better soil in smaller spaces, in containers. I mean, seeing people do like cover cropping in a container and layering in mulch, you know, to regenerate that soil after their season is over, and then moving, you know, into the next crop. And looking back at it now, I think that that's where we need to really start a lot of this work, is, you know, by like at the ground layer, literally. Again, I don't know what's going on today. It's a little cloudy, so that might be part of it. It's country internet. And okay, so I'm gonna grab another one of these while it's rebooting. This is a question I've been asking for a long time. Patreon says you need a Facebook account. I think you can do it without a Facebook account, Ralph, but if you can't, then it's alright. You'll be okay. Yeah, I don't know, the stream is being weird. There we go. Okay, we're back. So, okay, here's a question that I've thought about a lot. Right? Yeah, country internet. It's so much faster than what I used to have, but some days it's just like not having it. So how can I take wild mushrooms and culture them to my existing raised beds and potted plants? If you figure out this question, if you figure out an answer to it, like, please let me know. Because that's part of why I went down the soil building rabbit hole, was knowing that the fungi that I'd like to grow more of, like grow, but naturally in the woods, there's a lot of stuff that we don't actually have information on how to grow it. So like the chanterelles have never been cultivated successfully in a environment. Like even, I don't even think they have been so much outdoors. Like we've done it, I say we, like the general growing community has done it with like morels and obviously all of the normal edibles, so like shiitake, oysters and whatnot. And like you could do those potentially in your raised beds. It would be really interesting to see somebody do it as like a log border on their raised bed and then plug them in. I think that would be kind of cool. And there's some that will grow, you know, in bark mulch. The Straperia is always a nice one to start with just to get a feel for growing mushrooms, and it's a, you know, easy one for anyone who's beginning on growing. But some of the wild ones are just like, I don't know, like it's still being looked into and figured out. So we'll see how that goes as we go along. I'm hoping to connect some dots there between whatever micro partners some of the mycelium need in order to effectively, you know, exist and fruit. I know that there's definitely like some endo and ecto mycorrhizal action going on depending on what varieties you're talking about, but I think there's so much more to that equation than we've managed to figure out at this point. So yeah, figuring out, I mean, just building soil and then seeing what it can support. I think we're going to see a lot more interesting growth in terms of fungi come out of that space as we get better at building soil and understanding micro partners. But it's just not there yet. So right now it's all a gamble, and I'm trying, you know, to collect spores and IMOs and whatnot and replicate that in other parts of the woods where the conditions seem as favorable. But, you know, there's no guarantee that it's going to work. So, yeah, it's a good conversation about fertilizers happening if you're looking at this chat. And I would definitely agree that if you can avoid using synthetic fertilizers, then do that. Another reason why, in addition to them building up in the soil and then also creating nitrate runoff, is that they basically exclude your micro partners in the soil. And so you're running a direct A to B, you know, you're feeding your plant and your plant is using the nutrients that it's able to get. But all of the various, and I'm totally going to screw up the definition, but based on the conversations that I've been having with friends who actually do microbiology, all of the like various partners as far as your protozoa and your microbes and your bacteria and various fungi, like they're not really able to process it the same way, and lazy because they can get everything that they need without having to work for it. And so without having that like root partnership, then the synthetic fertilizer eventually, in a roundabout way, kind of kills off the soil life to some extent. That's my understanding of it at this point. But I don't see the point of paying for things that you can make and make easily. So that's kind of my goal there, is to figure out as much as we can do to not spend a ton of money in order to grow food. Because what's the joke is like, I grew a $200 tomato. It's like, yeah, that actually does happen if you're following, the protocol that's given to you by the Green Revolution. So yeah, I do. I should go turn the antenna on my roof, but I might fall off the roof. So I'll have to go look at it after we're done here. I'm trying to see how long we've been going now. It's 1. We'll go for a few more minutes if you guys want. Oh man, moderators are just laying the smack down. I love you guys. So this was another one when we were talking about the greenhouse situation and peppers melting down in it because it just got hot. This is sort of the flip side. Peppers from seed grew well in my greenhouse, and they browned when I moved them outside and they lost their leaves, but the ones in the shade are doing okay. This is generally a not hardening off situation, and so one of the things that we do when we're moving seedlings from starting indoors or in a greenhouse to outdoors is you need to slowly acclimate them to the amount of light and different temperature that they get outside. And this is why I like starting seeds in the ground, like where they're going to be, and I've started liking that a lot more because they seem a little more resilient even though they get a late start. But one of the things that you can do is just move them out for a few hours a day and then move them back in, and then like slowly increase that until they're ready to go out, and then you shouldn't have as much issues with it. This is really just a stress situation for those peppers, and it super sucks when that happens because I've been there. I'm pretty sure we've all been there. You think you can get away with it. You're like, that was me. I'm like, I don't need to harden off my plants. Like, they're hardy. And then you lose half of them because they just weren't acclimated. So doing a little bit of acclimation will help. Let's see. I don't actually know what the white powdery looking stuff on the expanded clay pellets in a hydroponic setup would be. I don't have any experience with hydroponics. I'm talking with a friend who has an aquaponics system that they're releasing a new one soon, and I'm hoping to get my hands on one and see if we can't play with it here because it's not a space I've worked in. So stay tuned, but maybe someone in the comments can help you out. Yeah, I do have actually a lot of black soldier flies in my compost, as well as there's another, I never remember the name of the bug, but it's the one that looks like a helicopter and it's like lots of legs, like a flying daddy long leg. I've seen that they have those grubs in there as well. So I haven't even turned my compost. It's a little bit less than half of the amount now that it's collapsed down to because it's full of bugs that are just eating it. So I'm just letting it ride and seeing what happens, and then I'm watering it every so often because it has been dry. And so, if the sides dry out because it's wire, so it gets watered. Let's see who else. Oh, we got that. Blossom and rot, we're good. How long have you been gardening? So I've been gardening, yeah, helicopter bug, but it has a real name. I just never remember it. So I've been gardening, a long time. Probably since I was like 4 or 5, like actually working and starting to process it, but not really research based until I was probably like 20, in my early 20s, I'd say. So at least a decade. And that was when I really started. I had access to a huge backyard in a house that I was living in Los Angeles, and it ended up being close to like 1,000 square feet of growing space between the backyard and the front yard. And I'll have to do like a little, Ken Burns video slideshow of it because it's kind of interesting. I think it's interesting that it was solid rock and clay. It hadn't been worked in a while. The weeds were horrible. Like the soil was awful. And I went, okay, I want to garden, but I'm not quite sure how to go about amending this much space without buying tons of soil, and I can't afford that. So that's when I discovered lasagna gardening. And that was like sort of my first foray into no dig and building soil and doing things differently than I had grown up learning, the whole tilling, amending situation. And yeah, it just kind of exploded from there. And it was like, okay, well, what can I grow that is interesting that I can't get at the market? And so yeah, it's been a little over 10 years, I think, really focused and dialed in now for the last, I'd say 4 or 5, as far as, digging into research around why things work and how I can do things better. And that's a lifelong process. I talk to gardeners and mentors that I know that are like in their 60s and 70s, and they're like, yeah, we're still learning every day. So I think that's really exciting, that everyone can just kind of jump in at some point and, you know, constantly learn from each other. And I learn from you guys a lot, so I think that's super great. Yeah, Donald, and I love that. Like, that's my favorite thing about growing food, is not only do we have something to eat at the end of the day, and not only are we capable of supporting the ecosystems we exist in, but we're also building a sense of community, which is why I love doing these Q&As, just to kind of try and get to know you guys a little better, and, you know, where the pain points are, and maybe talk through some of the issues that I'm having as well. So, yeah, so having seasons is sort of jarring. When I was in Central Coast in California, we had a little bit of seasons, but it was really like, you know, you have monsoon season for a month, and then you have drought and fire season for like 7 months, and then you have winter. And you could grow in winter still, though. That was the thing. Like, we didn't get crazy freezing days, so I'd have brassicas without row covers and stuff. Here, I'm still figuring it out, because not only do we have seasons, but we'll have like 4 seasons in a day, because it's Texas. So what's the saying is, like, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, because it's going to change. Like, I've just, in this time that we've been having this Q&A, like, I've seen it go from full sun to clouds, and now the wind is picking up, and it looks like it might rain, and it probably won't. But I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if we had a hailstorm tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting growing with seasons, and it's definitely the learning curve I was looking for, no doubt. Yeah, the number of hot peppers, this was a Bo saying the number of hot peppers, super overwhelming. I have the video that I shot with a couple of friends that came and visited. It's been almost a year now, when I was at my friend's farm in California, and I'm almost done editing it. I've got like a lot of bleeping and stuff to do, because it's, you know, me and 2 dude friends eating hot peppers, but that might help, and maybe I'll get that finished so we can try and figure out what to order for next year as far as flavor is concerned. It's only covering 2 dozen, so it might not be that helpful, but there's a lot of them out there. Yeah. I did set up, if you're on Instagram, my P.O. box info is there. I can also add it. There's a tab on YouTube somewhere here. I think there's a community tab, and I can put it. Did that work? Okay, yeah. So there's a community tab, and I'll add my P.O. box to that tab here on YouTube as well if you don't have Instagram. Just so, you know, if there's something you want to send me, but hopefully not like dirty socks or anything gross. Because I'd feel really bad for the post office if that's what they have to sort through. So just nice things, please. And I am hoping to set up some sort of like seed swap or exchange at some point later in the season. I'm collecting seeds like crazy, but I don't know as far as quantity goes, like if there'll be enough to share, but hopefully we can get some sort of, you know, seed swap. I think that would be cool, for sure. I don't know why you'd send me dirty socks, but people on the internet can be weird sometimes, so I feel like maybe if I make the disclaimer, then it won't happen. It might actually happen more. I'm not sure. Let's see. Moving sweet corn from the greenhouse over 7 feet tall, and the corn has started splitting. I don't know. I've never actually moved. Like, I don't tend to transplant sweet corn, so I would not know the answer to that. I'm really sorry that that's happening. But yeah, I tend to direct sow it whenever I can. Let's see. What else is on this wall? I think that we're going to have to get going here pretty soon because I don't want to abuse my mods. Veggies and herbs. Hey, this is veggies and herbs that would work well with little sun in the fall. So when we get into this point where we're switching seasons, and that was kind of my stipulation on not starting seeds right now, but there are some that are worth starting. So a lot of things that you can grow in shade include things like brassicas. We'll do a little bit, not full shade, but they'll do a little bit of shade. You can get some potentially carrots, cabbages, greens going, spinach moving into the fall and even into the winter. So you're looking at like anything. I mean, I would Google cool season veggies, and those will give you like a nice start on the direction that you should go. Most herbs that are perennial will survive, you know, a little bit of sun, like minimal sun in the fall. I've grown, you know, lavender and mint, and rosemary can be touchy, but thyme and oregano, like, they like some shade, or they'll tolerate some shade at least. So I'd say basically any of your cool season stuff. I guess you'd have to define what little sun is, really. Like, if it's only an hour a day, then we might have to revisit that question. But if it's like, you know, 3 to 4 hours a day, then there are certain things you can get away with, and just, yeah, figuring it out from there. So these questions will be posted. I don't know what you mean by that. The questions will be posted later. Are you talking about on Instagram? I'm kind of answering them here versus typing them out on Instagram, because I feel like stories kind of goes by and then not everyone sees what they want to. If you have a better tour dog, if you have a better method to go about doing this, please message me, because I'm still trying to parse, you know, how to best interact and engage. Mexican bean beetles. So that's another thing that I'm looking at with the kaolin clay or with my native clay, and being able to, you know, spray it on the foliage of the plants in order to potentially prevent insects from burrowing and eating the leaves. I haven't started spraying, but I'm going to do it on, I'm going to test it out on some of my pumpkins. So, yeah, oh yeah, the video will be available after, is that what you're asking? Thanks, Ralph. I wasn't quite sure what was happening with that question. Yeah, so there was another one. Oh, someone was asking ways to get peppers to start ripening more quickly on the plant. I don't actually know of a way to get them to ripen more quickly on the plant, short of cutting the plant and then ripening them, you know, off to the side in a bag. Maybe someone in the comments would be able to help with that. But as far as I'm aware, you just gotta bide your time. You could potentially, if it's starting to cool off in your area, look into adding row covers. So doing, you know, one of those, it's like a polyester spun fiber that's white, and you use it to start early in the spring when you're trying to like get stuff going sooner, or to extend your harvest into the fall. Like, that can help if you're dealing with, you know, cooler temperatures, especially cooler nights, and these big fluctuations that could potentially help ripen. But if it's really warm where you're still at, then covers might not be the best idea, or at least, you know, vent them during the daytime so that you don't end up with a bunch of burned plants. Yeah. Look at you, Phytoalchemist. See, this is the, I keep telling this dude, I'm like, you need to do YouTube, because you're just so smart in this space, but he refuses. So we'll just get him in the comment section instead, and I'll stop calling him out. Yeah, so posting questions later that are hard to answer. We've been talking a little bit on Patreon about creating some sort of ecosystem for us to help each other out in that space. I know that there's garden web and whatnot that are already out there, but just something that's a little bit smaller, so that we can kind of approach and tackle problems collectively with a similar mindset that is very helpful, and not just like the rest of the internet tends to be. I want to keep things nice and fun. Like, that's what I'm about. So, yeah. So let's see. I did that one. If I could move, I like this one. If you could move to a different environment for growing purposes, where would it be? So if I could move to a different environment, I mean, there's stipulations here, right? I always have to like, I think if all of the factors in the world right now were not a factor, and I wasn't worried about, you know, temperatures changing and whatever, and I'd probably live in the tropics. Like, let's be honest, you know, if you're able to live someplace that gets ample rainfall, that you can grow basically like all of the fruit and weird stuff that you want, and you could do like cacao and vanilla and stuff outdoors. And I don't think that I'd miss winter that much. I figure you could probably just go and like ski or snowboard when you really want to see some snow. And as much as I don't really love being hot, and I don't really love being surrounded by bugs, I think the tropics would be the coolest place to grow. And I definitely, I think that, yeah, that would be my answer. We'll just leave it at that. Thanks, Laza Glider. I do have a rambling essay to read later, and I will get to that. We'll go for like 5 or 10 more minutes because there's people that are just giving great answers to each other in the comments, and part of me is like, I just wish that I could be like chatting instead of chatting here, but we can do it all at the same time, right? Let's see. This is a question that is why we need a space to like leave questions. Maybe I'll just put them. You know what? I can put them in the comments below this video, and then you guys can leave comments there, and then I'll feed that information back around to the other channels, and they can come look, and maybe it'll let me pin a few. I don't know. This is when and what to clone versus breeding and self-pollination. I'm guessing that's a lot to ask in one question. I will say my thoughts around cloning versus breeding self-pollination is that if you clone, so my understanding is cloning is duplicating exact genetic material. You're going to have the exact same plant, and it's a part of that plant. So if you have a bunch of clones, anything that's going to impact one clone is going to potentially impact all of them. When we're talking disease, we're talking insect pressure. And in some situations, clones make sense. If there's a certain, flavor that you're trying to capture. Like, I have peppers that I'll do clones of because I only have one plant or two plants. And if an animal or something takes it out, I'd like to have a backup. When you get into breeding and self-pollination, that's really more of trying to capture the resilience of that genetic material, how it's, processed the season that it's currently in or the season before that, and then selecting from there to basically build the best plants for your environment, more or less. So I'm a big proponent of self-pollination and saving seeds from that process, and hand pollination and saving seeds from that process, but I also understand the value of cloning in various applications. So I don't think that I'm not going to tell you what to clone. I'm sure someone else can do that in the comments. I clone peppers, and I don't think that it's this versus that in every situation. I think it is a case-by-case basis as far as what are your goals and objectives. What are you looking to get out of the process? Yeah. Did you look? Let's see. How long does something like trees or a rose need to be? I know I don't understand that question, Tony. I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense. I will post Georgia Briarman, I'm guessing. I will post my PO information on the community tab on my YouTube page after we're done with this live stream, just so that it's here as well. I don't have it to copy paste into the chat. I did not have that level of foresight, and I don't know it by heart yet. But yeah, I'll share it here, so keep an eye out. We did this one, I think. We were basically, that's funny. So one of the other ones I had that was from YouTube that I meant to mention, or Instagram, we're on YouTube, was the best way to protect stone fruit from peach tree borers. So that was why I started with the clay situation. I had noticed, in addition to the sun scalds, that I had noticed that there was some insect damage happening, and I saw, sap coming out of the trunk. And so it's really, you got to get in there with like a paper clip or a piece of wire. I don't know if this is actually recommended, but I know some orchardists who do it, and it's like, get in there and wiggle it around until you're able to stab whatever's in there, and then I'm packing clay over it because I don't want anything else boring in. I think having that barrier layer is going to be helpful. I don't entirely know yet, but we'll see. We'll see if it works out. That's the way I'm going about it. I don't like the idea of spraying anything that's chemical. And chemical's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. That's a insecticide. I am very concerned about my beneficials. I see what the amount of insecticides did to insect populations in general in California, and while it's a little disarming still to constantly be bombarded by insects when I walk outside, it is part of the natural ecosystem. So I'm very, very hesitant to impact that more than I need to in order to grow stuff. Yeah. So let's see. No luck with the aloe method for cloning peppers. Oh no. Oh no, you're saying no luck with the rooting cuttings and water. Got it. Okay. Yeah, so try the aloe method and let me know let me know how that works out for you, because I mean, these guys, I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the feed, but I'll show you again. That these guys are still looking, I cut these probably a week ago, and they're still looking pretty happy. They're a little faded, but they're a little faded to begin with. I got some plants, full disclosure, like I got a few plants from the nursery just because I thought we might be short for salsa. So I was like, let's get some more tomatoes, some more peppers. But everything they have right now is super leggy. And they're like, you sure you want that? I'm like, yeah, because I have this cloning experiment, so I might as well, you know, cut the tops off and see if it doesn't give myself more volume to work with. Yeah. Aeration definitely can be key when cloning. That was something I found out when I was trying to water clone some rootstock, and they started, but then I forgot to refill the reservoir. So they dried out, and I felt like I gave my clones a really slow death and felt bad about that. But yeah. Tony was asking about tree and rose cuttings, how long they should be. Oh, got it. So I honestly would not know the answer to that question. I tend to go for a little bit longer just so I can get more nodes, like leaf nodes, underground if I'm trying to root them in soil, because I feel like that gives me a better chance of success. But potentially maybe somebody else has a better answer than that. I usually am looking at like at least 8 to 10 inches on a tree cutting. I don't do a lot of rose propagation, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. Oh no, so yeah, if you're peach tree, if you're getting completely defoliated, Tracy, and you think that it's a borer, well, if you have any more trees that are still alive, then I'd potentially look at taking cuttings if it's a tree that you really like. So taking cuttings, ordering, like popping them in the fridge. God, it's not a good time to do this though. I'm trying to think, maybe you could try air layering. So that might be your best shot, either air layering or if it has any like root sprouts. I don't know if it's on grafted material, like what the situation there is. But yeah, we're definitely starting to see a lot of insect pressure, and so that's why I'm looking into the clay situation. Looking into a lot of the Korean natural farming stuff to kind of boost for lack of a better term, the immune system of the soil, and really just trying to figure out better support, because even some of the big orchardists that I follow are like, they're dealing with similar problems, and you know, I don't want to be spraying copper and fungicide and insecticide in my orchard. I don't know if anyone else does, but like that's the whole point of growing food for me, is to know that I'm not eating those things. So you might try to at least get cuttings. It's not really the right time of year to do it, but you may have some success rather than it being like just sitting back and watching it die. Like at least you know that you tried to save it. Will I be cooking in Paraguay again? I will not, no. That job has run its course. I decided that I really wanted to step back and focus on farming. I am looking at potentially doing maybe some pop-up work as well as like private dinner parties in a more local area. So if that's something that anyone's looking for, then you can get in touch with me. There should be a contact link somewhere, I think, on the community page as well. You can get in touch and we can chat a little. I'm just not, I just don't want to be away from, I'm invested in being I am invested in being a farmer, and I don't want to be away for, you know, a month or two at a time, and I really want to be a free agent. So no plans to do that anytime soon. Let me see who else is in here, and then I'm probably gonna head out soon. Why do you have wrenches by your names? I don't even know what that means, wrenches. Oh, so some people have wrenches by their names in the chat because they're moderating the chat, and so any comments that they feel are not necessary or productive, they're basically swiping those out and swiping profiles out who are just in here to not have productive you know, educational conversation around what questions you guys are asking, and that helps me to see the actual questions as well as helps you to have just like a better experience overall. So thank you, wrench holders, all my monkey wrenchers, I don't know what to call you. Do you support peppers if they're pruned? I do sometimes, yeah. So if it seems like it needs support, then I'll add support to it. And it goes on a case-by-case basis. I mean, some things don't respond the way that I'd like them to pruning, and I don't want to prune them again. So we let them go, and we see what happens. And if they need staking, I mean, I have quite a few in the shade that did need staking because they got leggy, then it got hot, then they bushed out. So I'm just staking them up and letting them ride. Like, that seems to make the most sense to me right now. Yeah, Ralph has answered that question too. Thank you, Michael, for joining. Tim, the pepper plant with the aloe. So the first one I did, like, I pulled the bag off, I think, to show you guys last week, and then I forgot to put it back on, and then it just totally dried out, which is why I have these guys behind me here in this jar, to kind of try and keep that humidity up. And so I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 in there, and we're going to see if they work, and if they work for anyone else out there, and then we can decide, am I doing something wrong, or is it just a method that I've been lied to about by the internet? I don't know. Like, I like trying these with, I can't think of the name, there's one of those like video content creating things that does these like 2 minutes of plant tips or whatever. And oh my god, it went around one of the plant meme groups the other day. It was just like, these are not, none of these, like 2 of these work out of like 20, and people are getting bad information. And so I like to take the ones that sound like they'd make sense and then be like, hey, let's all test it out and see if it works. And then if it doesn't, then we can be like, this doesn't work, and eventually put together a video or something of all the tips that are recommended that don't actually work, so that we can save other people a lot of time and, you know, feeling like they did something wrong, when really it's just the method is not good. So I'd rather be the guinea pig for that, and, you know, work through that process, and also find out, like, maybe I'm doing it wrong and it works for someone else. So I like that. A question form on your Patreon channel where fans can submit questions. Yeah, so I do a call, actually, just like a post, although it got posted late this week because I decided to do this very last minute. I'm going to get better at scheduling, I promise. But I do a post on Patreon that says, if you have any questions, like, leave them here. And they're the pink Post-its this week. And so the pink ones are Patreon, the purple ones were Instagram. I didn't get any on Facebook, so there wasn't an extra color. But I just basically like go through all of the questions that I receive on various platforms, because not everyone's on everything, and try and work through all of those. So yeah, all the Patreon ones definitely, like, they get up there, they I hit all of those, and then I, you know, try and work through them based on what's going on here in chat. But another forum, I'll see if I can't come up with something. That's great. Yeah, your mods are, there's so much stuff I'm not even seeing. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not seeing it, I think. They're still sticky behind me. So this was the one about venting the greenhouse, and we answered that. I have not figured it out yet. I'm gonna have to take a Sawzall to a window, I think, and throw it on a hinge and probably put a screen in and see if I can't get a better cross breeze. Like, I think that's what it's gonna come down to. And then maybe, what are they called? It's some sort of blower. I can't think what it's called. There's an industrial, like, duct that I've been looking at getting. And it's not crazy expensive. It's just, it's time and money, always. There's another one. Someone was asking me about mugwort as a beneficial plant, and how do I control it because it spreads like mad. I don't have the spreading problem because we're really dry here. If you're in a wet environment, you're definitely going to have, it'll spread like mint. I've done it on irrigation before, and that is true. Yeah, control it by pulling it out. Like, that's the best I can give you. I don't do herbicides, so anytime a plant's going crazy in an area, I either let it do its thing, which is the case with mint, because I love it, or I'll pull it out where I don't want it. I mean, that's, yeah, FPJs from the mugwort. I actually, looking into, that would be fermented plant juice for Korean natural farming. I'm looking into using more native and localized medicinal plants and roots to do the nutrient tinctures for the Korean natural farming stuff versus all of the buying and importing stuff that we tend to do in order to make those things happen. I know I gotta make the one by the book first, but yeah, so we will see. If half my plants survive, I consider it a resounding success. I completely agree, especially since I'm constantly pushing them to the limits. I had mentioned that, I don't remember where it was the other day, but that, I think it was in a YouTube comment. Oh my god. There was like an alarm going off. Yay. So I had a YouTube comment talking about why I was pushing methods so hard and trying to reinvent the wheel. And like, that's not the goal here at all. The goal is to figure out my soil type, and this is the first year in a new place. And so I am in the same boat where I'm like, hey, if half of the things survive, I'm going to consider it to be a really successful year. And it's hard because you do get down when you start seeing things not doing well. But we're always learning and growing together and in our spaces, in this ecosystem and everywhere else. So I definitely am hoping to. I love seeing the scientists pop up in the comments because that I learned so much from you guys. I'm definitely hoping to grow in this ecosystem with you guys as well as in my own one that I have here at home, and just learning how to connect with it a lot better than I think that a lot of the information out there kind of tends to overlook, like how we are integrated into it and how we can best support it versus just trying to demand that it provides certain things for us without it being cared for in return. And so looking at, caring for our soil and our space and each other, really glad that so many people were able to join me today. Apologies for like all of the thank you. No apologies, but thank you for just bearing with me as we learn how to make this sort of interactive experience a little bit better. Of course, if you have feedback, more questions and comments, please leave them below. And if you, have like specific, if you haven't looked through the stuff that I've been working on outside of the videos, I highly recommend Instagram. I think that it might be possible to just go to instagram.com/flavorkit and look without an account. I don't know if that's true, but you might be able to, but there's lots of conversations there. There's lots of things to like, just a brain fart. I don't know. There's lots of cool stuff. Like, it's all gardening. There's a little bit of cooking. I think that it's worth, checking out if you're looking to get inside my head a little more. And I'm hoping to just build this out to be a really safe space for us to just have conversations about things as far as growing, that it's not, like, oh, that's the worst way to do it. It's just, yeah, I can show the pineapple before I go. Thanks for stopping me from my rambling, Ralph. But yeah, it's just a space to like actually have useful, I guess that's what I'm getting at, is useful conversations. He really needs to go in a pot. I keep saying this, and then I keep leaving him on the shelf, and look at those roots. He's like trying so hard. He's got new little leaves. Yeah, it's gonna go in a pot soon. I just love seeing it on the shelf. But yeah, I'm all about entertaining conversations that are productive, even if they're critical. Like, be critical of every method because that's good science, right? But don't critique without having something to add to the conversation, is I guess where I'm getting at. So I'm hoping that we can build that here. Vibing with the methods for madness, that always makes me happy. And I think that we're going to end this on that. And yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. So if you have more questions beyond that, leave them in the comments below. Follow me on Instagram. You can hit me up on Patreon at Veronica Flores if you need a little more like one-on-one chatting and whatnot. I like spread myself very thin across the internet, but I love it. I love talking about gardening all day. So until next time when we do this again, happy gardening, you guys. Thank you. Bye. I'm gonna find the X faster. Oh, there it is. Okay. Bye.